Let's return to This Week in America. Here's your host, Ric Bratton.
Welcome back, everybody, coast to coast, This Week in America. The Beauty of His Presence is a 40-day devotional guide for Christians, geared toward personal reflection, growth, discipleship, and encouragement in the life of the believer. The author of Beauty of His Presence is Joan Chanel Evans. Born in the Bahamas, she lived there all of her life. Encouraged to read by her parents at an early age, first grade, she began writing, and her work was published in her school's Christmas magazine. She writes in many genres, has had poems published, a regular devotional writer. She's also written short plays and has appeared in dramatic productions put on by her church. Joan Chanel Evans, author of The Beauty of His Presence, is our guest on This Week in America. Joan, welcome to the program. It's great to have you with us today.
Thank you for having me.
This is such an important book and has really reshaped the lives of so many people, and I'll talk about that in depth here in a second, but I'm fascinated by this background in reading and writing. Talk about the role of your parents, because they really, at an early age, instilled in you the desire to read and eventually to write as well.
Well, it was just with my mother. Mothers would read bedtime stories to their children. With my mother, it was always poetry. While she was doing her work, she was reciting poems. And my father, in his earlier years, was a school teacher, so he always encouraged us to read, and he was always bringing home books for us to read. So that influence from them, it had my imagination going from a very early age. So I was trying to rewrite these stories that I would have read in the books. I tried to write poetry. So they really had a strong influence on my personality as a person, as a writer, and my desire to write from infancy, more or less.
And I mentioned that you have this desire, this interest in different genres. Talk about that, and maybe if there's a genre that you enjoy writing the most.
Oh, yes. It's amazing because for me, I find that my interest in genres change depending on what's happening in my life at the time. But I have the most joy in writing the devotional essays and writing the mystery stories, because I've always been fascinated with the mysteries. And actually, when the desire to write was birthed within me, I always wanted to be a mystery writer more than the devotional writer. The devotional writer came about through my relationship with the Lord and my desire just to express my feelings of my experiences in my Christian journey. So I thought the devotional essays came about, and I enjoy writing them. So the two genres that I enjoy most are the devotional essays and the mystery stories.
Joining us on This Week in America is Joan Chanel Evans. If you go to Google that, she writes under the name J. Chanel Evans, and Chanel is Shannell. The book we're talking about is The Beauty of His Presence. You can link on to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, get information, and go directly to Amazon and information on the book. What inspired you to write this book, The Beauty of His Presence?
Well, that in itself is an interesting story, because my sister, like I said, my parents had a heavy influence, so all of my siblings, we dabble in writing at some level or the other. My sister had a book that she was writing, and she was looking for someone to publish her work. So I decided that I would help her, and I was contacting companies, and one of the companies that I'd written to, they called me, and one of the reps called me, and because she was thinking that I was looking for it for myself. So in the process, I was trying to explain to her that I was looking for the company for my sister. She said to me, "But what about you? Don't you have anything that you want to have published?" So I said to her, "I have some devotional pieces that I've written, but I'm not looking to publish them, at least not at this time." So she said, what she said then is what got to me. She said, "But what if there are hurting persons out there who are in need of hearing what God has laid on your heart at this time?" So when she said that, it was like I was hearing in her voice that she may have been one of those hurting persons who was needing to hear from the Lord. So that challenged me to put together the devotional pieces. So I said to her, then I will look certainly look at putting together my devotional pieces to see if I have enough to compile into a book. And so that's how the book got started.
You know, it's interesting. What a question to have asked, and I'm sure all of a sudden your attitude changed, and you struggled, I'm sure, with that question and realized, yes, I can help people with what I've written.
Yes, definitely. Because like I said, it was like she was crying out. It's like I heard a silent cry from her because she was asking, what if there are persons out there? But it was like she was saying to me, well, I need to hear. So that is what really challenged my heart.
Once you decide to write the book, you have to come up with a title of the book that describes what the book is about and captures the attention of a reader. You've got a few seconds for somebody to hear that title to figure out whether they're interested in pursuing it or not. The title of the book is The Beauty of His Presence. How did you arrive at that title?
Well, I prayed about it at first. I said, Lord, give me a title for the book. And as I was sitting there going through the pieces, I came across the one that I had written called The Beauty of His Presence. And I was reading through it, and I realized that, this article and this topic captures what exactly I was trying to do, because I find beauty in the presence of the Lord and in my writing. And in the book, I wanted to encourage others to find beauty in His presence as well. And so I decided there and then that would be the title for the book, The Beauty of His Presence.
And the book is available at Amazon, the usual places. If you go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, you can link on directly to get information on the book, The Beauty of His Presence by J. Chanel Evans. Joan is our guest on the program today. One review says this is more like a conversation than a sermon, and that is very comforting. Talk about your writing style and the fact that you can read this and relate. Sometimes it's intimidating when we read devotionals and we're not quite sure exactly how to respond. You have this way, it's almost like we're talking now, two people talking, and you're giving me a little bit of guidance, your inner thoughts. Talk about the writing style, because this really is very open to people and they can relate to it.
Well, when I write, it's like I am more or less having a conversation with myself, because that is what happens. Like, the Lord ministers to me in different situations, so I'm writing as I'm communing with Him. So it's more like a conversation with Him, and I realize because I'm writing it in a conversational style, as if I'm talking to Him, it helps others to see that is how they can also talk to the Lord, and that is how they can relate. And I'm hoping that it helps them to be able to even relate to me. So it would not be like I'm having this